Dominic, good to see you. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me on, my friend. My pleasure.
So it wasn't that long ago you were on, and if you go on the Facebook post that I did, man, people were like, talking about you. He was a racist, and he's this, he's that. And the funny thing is, these comments come in like a month after our conversation. You and Lily Gaddis, they hammer. I couldn't even keep up with the amount of attack that girl gets on my Instagram.
Yeah, I actually did an interview with Lily not too long ago, and funny enough, no one had a problem with what I had to say, but I had a few personal friends of mine that I know in real life be like, hey, she's got some content on her page that's pretty controversial. And I was like, hey, she's got a relationship with Owen Troyer, a professional relationship. And she asked me for an interview and I discussed what I discussed. I didn't look. Sorry. I mean, we're supposed to be having and promoting free discussion here, Michael. Like, give me a break, guys.
My thing with all that, like if you don't like it, just turn it off. Like I've had boomers that come on my channel because guests are swearing like excessively, and
Hmm.
they're like the language, the language, the language. It's like just turn it off. It's just a conversation. Like
And you know what? And I'll say, I know that, certain styles for people maybe don't match with certain aspects of the audience. But if you actually look statistically, and not someone that swears, over frequently and in a very distasteful way, but actually statistically, it shows that people trust people that are willing to swear a little bit more because it just comes off as a little bit more raw and authentic. And it's one of the main reasons oftentimes that politicians are often not very trusted because they come off as too polished and it seems inorganic. So give us a break. We'll make sure to keep it clean today and just, but yeah, guys,
who gives a
come on.
fuck? Who gives a fuck, Dominic? Like, but the other thing is too. Do you think our society or our culture? Do you think there's a lot of rage out there where people are so like on edge that the like little things like that just set it off or trigger them?
I do. Yeah. I think that, the phrase goes something along the lines of, what is it? Idle hands or the work of the devil, or something about idle hands or the work of the devil, or something along those lines. And the point is that if you've got a lot of time and you're sitting on the internet and you're someone that's mainly a consumer, not a producer, then yeah, you're gonna write some mean comments and I will say this, and this is kind of a different aspect of it, but as far as like my audience is mostly conservatives, the conservative movement has kind of been built for battle over the last decade. I mean, we went through the 2016 stuff where they attacked Trump constantly. They went through, the COVID lockdowns and the mandates, and they went through the 2020 election. A lot of frustration on the right wing, in the right wing recently. And so, yeah, I think they're a little overly combative online. You can definitely sense that sometimes.
Well, and do you think there is a divide going on now in terms of? I mean, our society's been divided, but do you also think there's a divide right with the right with the MAGA?
Oh, I think this is actually the most divided that I've seen the American right since I've been involved in politics, which is around. I mean, I started taking it. I mean, I was only a young man at this time in like 2004, like around the middle of the first Bush administration. I mean, I was only in like ninth grade when September 11th happened, but when September 11th happened, I became pretty politically interested and engaged as a young guy. And progressively over time, it only got more serious. And sure, there would be some fighting among the right on some issues, but we were mostly pretty aligned. And like the conservative establishment essentially was the entirety of the whole right wing, really up until Donald Trump's ascendance. And I truthfully, and I know that it's a sensitive topic, but I do really think that ever since October 7th, there has been just a sensationalized, in a large, actually, not necessarily a large, but a quiet, excuse me, a small but very loud minority on X that just consistently pushes, criticism of Israel, to put it lightly. And then, if you can tell by our politicians and by many of the largest conservative influencers, they're very aligned with Israel, and they don't even really want to discuss any potential criticisms of it. So you just constantly see people going at each other, and it's advancing to a stage where I'm worried that it's almost irreparable. I really do worry about that. And like one of the good example is how you see some of like the vitriol sort of going against Daily Wire, who just yesterday their president allegedly had to step down due to financial issues. Just a few weeks ago, Jeremy Boring resigned or was fired, or I'm not exactly sure the particulars, but yeah, I think it's very evident that there's a big divide on the right, and I sure hope that we can kind of mend fences, because realistically, they agree on 95% of things, but they only focus on the 5% that they don't agree on.
Yeah, I don't know how you bring up Daily Wire and people are like championing. I can't say it right. Championing, celebrating that fact that they're like on the ropes. I feel like, which
Yeah.
5 years ago, I mean, and I haven't been in the scene as long as you have, but I remember first watching Ben Shapiro at those college campuses. I'm like, man, this guy's great. Like, I didn't know any better. Watching him
Well,
on, it was longer than that, when he was on Bill Maher, when Trump's first term, it's fantastic. Watch him on Rogan, fantastic. But then as time goes on, you're like, man, first of all, like to me, how many college campuses do you need to go on? How many college kids do you need to show your superiority to? Like at some point, the act kind of gets old to me.
of course, yeah.
And so the novelty's worn off. And then, two, to be your point with Israel, it's like, I thought we're supposed to be objective here.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and that's kind of that especially with the online right, though, who's very engaged and looking into the issues, following the current news cycle every day. They're combing over things that your average American probably doesn't have the time or the desire to look into. But yeah, that's the thing, is the landscape and the talking points in the right wing have really changed over the last 4 or 5 years. And again, I do think that it really was spearheaded by October 7th, because it was always Israel. It was always a third rail that people just simply wouldn't discuss at all. But this, the constant imagery of war and the fact that, essentially America funds all of that. I mean, really almost every single dollar of it, every single missile that the Iron Dome shoots funded by America. We quietly just passed over $7 billion to them just in 2025 alone. They're the biggest recipient of foreign aid since 1948 by a large margin. A lot of people never really looked at this. They didn't care about this. And especially younger people, I mean, they just have isolationist views. Like, to me, it's not so much even about Israel themselves. It's not really, it doesn't have to do with the fact that it's Israel. It just has to do with the fact that we're providing blank check security guarantees and no questions asked acquiescence to almost every single request that they have, to where people that are paying attention are starting to notice. And that's why, I mean, you're seeing a statistical and observable decline in the Daily Wire's viewership and metrics. And even though I do understand that plenty of people find stuff that Candace Owens says to be distasteful or racist or anti-Semitic or whatever you might categorize it. I happen to be a fan of hers. I think she's a truth warrior. But regardless of opinions, she has, according to the Wall Street Journal, the third largest online show in existence today. And I looked at just the last 10 episodes of Candace Owens' new podcast in comparison to Ben Shapiro's. And I'm talking, it's like 1,800,000, 500,000 views in comparison to 20,000, 100,000. I mean, it's 5, 6, at sometimes 10 times more viewership. So I do think that observably biased media, whether it's pro-Israel or whether it's really pro any particular talking point, if there's no room for debate, or there's no room for reasonable criticism, I think it's a problem. And I think that's why you're seeing the decline in the Daily Wire and other outlets that are like that as well.
Where do you think, where does the Daily Wire go from here? Do they survive, in your opinion?
One of my followers asked me that question yesterday
You
because
got one of the. Let me before you answer that. You got one of the best handles out there on Twitter or on X right now, man. I mean, you're putting stuff out there that I mean, it's one of my go tos right now.
no, well, first of all, I really appreciate that. But yeah, I started putting a little bit more opinion in there recently because I only really did news updates because we were just talking about this earlier, but I mean, not that I care so much about people's opinions or commenters, just like random comments online, but the bigger that you get, the more comments that you're going to receive, and the more opinionated you are, the more sharp or divisive or crazy some of the comments might be. But yeah, I started putting a little bit more opinion out there because I noticed the just the kind of there was incentivized groupthink and just sort of monolithic messaging that I continuously was observing on X from some of the biggest accounts. It's like they just push the same stuff, and I made a post about it the other day, kind of mocking the new phrase "we are the media," and I do really love the independent journalism on X, and I think it's fantastic. But I showed a graphic, and it wasn't insinuating that these people were necessarily paid, and it's not under the assumption that they're bad people or anything, but they are posting literally the exact same, many times copy and pasted messages. Eggs are cheaper, gas is cheaper, this and that. In reality, they hadn't even changed hardly at all, but it's not so much about the messaging that they're pushing. It's about the fact that they all push it at the same time on the same days. And this has been highlighted recently by that whole Snap soda campaign, where you actually do, and you are noticing more and more every day, that there are active influence operations, paid or unpaid, that people are participating in on X, and it affects public opinion. So I started putting some other stuff out there, and some of the stuff I started putting out there was highlighting the fact that I thought that this new class of independent media is actually falling victim to some of the same things that we always criticize the mainstream media for, which is being able to have your opinions be bought or sold. And very unfortunately, I'm discovering that it's quite a bit more efficient and easier to buy out one or a class of influencers than it is to buy off the opinion of a highly paid television analyst that works for one of those companies. And I don't like those people. I don't watch the MSM. I don't trust it, but I'm just noticing the trend. And my ultimate loyalty is just to truth and justice. It's not to one particular man or party. Just the fact that, and despite the fact that I voted for Donald Trump 3 times, doesn't mean that he's impervious to reasonable criticism. And I'm starting to notice that, just some of these promises and some of the things that I voted for, they're not being emphasized and they're not being talked about and they're not being criticized by some of these big names. So I figured, you know what, man, I'm going to start.
Well, I think there's also people that are more concerned with being at Mar-a-Lago and being invited to events than they are with actually being objective. And maybe that was their intention when they started out, but some of it is it's clear that's not their intentions now. I see it all the time, and even some of the people that are part of this administration, it's like, how many times do I have to see you at an event dressed up? I don't know. The optics of it aren't good.
Well, I'll give you an inside fastball on this. I mean, what makes me the most particularly disgusted is that I know and I'm personal friends with several prominent influencers that have 5, 6, 7, however many hundreds of thousands of followers. They're good people. They're patriots, but they know, like, they have these exact same concerns. Many of them that I just shared a moment ago, but they are afraid and they self-censor because they realize that if they are to bring up any of these criticisms, like one right now, a popular one that I say all the time is, we need to fire Pam Bondi or she needs to resign. I don't think that's an unreasonable request, considering the fact that she straight up misled the American people about the Epstein files, which I consider to be of the utmost critical importance because it implicates several powerful people that are currently participating in government and large multinational corporations today, still actively. And so there are several people that they agree with me. They get either influenced by me or they ask me several questions privately almost every single day. But they refuse to actually articulate any of these things that they know because they are much more concerned with favor and access to the administration than they are with actually being just completely loyal to the truth, despite the fact that they may suffer either some financial or perhaps even reputational harm due to it. But like at the end of the day, just because you were ahead of a story or you were correct, you will be vindicated in the future when people see that you were right and you were willing to take the arrows in the beginning. That's my opinion. And just to share this, one of the individuals that was participating in the whole Bindergate thing with the Epstein files, there's someone that I advise and consider a close friend all the time, and we just talked today. And, we were discussing whether or not they should actually articulate that, yes, Pam Bondi should be fired, and that, yes, if this whole thing with the signal leak, if Democrats were in power and this were to be happening, every single one of these prominent influencers would be calling for an investigation. They would be calling for firings, and they would say that it was absurd that no action was being taken. Yet all of these same figures, because Trump and it's not even about Trump, but the fact that his orbiters are now in power and they made this mistake, they are continuously just making excuses, obfuscating, and just telling us that we're stupid conspiracy theorists for even trying to just have some simple accountability. So, yeah, a lot of people are upset that are major influencers. And I think ultimately here soon, if this continuation happens of blunders and sort of like intentional deception by this administration, I think they're going to start talking about it more.
Yeah, the binder thing, I know people were hammering the influencers that opened those binders, but I think to myself, all right, if I'm there and I'm there separately and I get handed a binder, see some of my peers, hey, walk outside, we're going to do a photo op. I don't know that I would have said anything. No, I wouldn't have. I don't want to say like I questioned it. I would have went along with it too, not realizing.
And they didn't even know about it. I can tell you with 100% authority, because I saw one of the invitations to this event that, only 12, 15 people saw. I actually saw the email myself because I know someone that was invited. They didn't know about it. They said nothing about the binders. They said nothing about any of that. They were bombarded. So I don't blame them personally. I get it. You're excited. You're at the White House. And I don't think that, because a lot of people too, when I do share some criticism, and I oftentimes talk about how major influencers' opinions are bought and paid for, and I'm disgusted by that. And I get a lot of comments that support me, but they're very vitriolic against some of the people. And I try to like sort of tell them like, hey, it's not them particularly. Don't be mad at them as an individual. Just be mad at the idea that we're supposed to be priding ourselves on the fact that X is a home for journalistic integrity and unbiased opinions and free discussion. And it's more so becoming like a political echo chamber only for Trump and Elon. So I don't know. Are you noticing that same type of thing, or is this just something I'm saying?
No, I'm noticing it. And first of all, I don't understand how Elon, running all these corporations, where's the time to post all day long?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I don't
unless he's got
I don't know how to answer it, but
unless he's got a whole team that's doing that for him. But yeah, no, it definitely feels it's like True Social moved over to X.
Yeah, and I do want to say this, and this is a pretty important point. And again, like I know that it seems like I'm coming just from total contrarian viewpoints, and that like I don't like the right wing, and I do. Like I like make no mistake about it. I'm honestly further right than basically everybody in the administration, which is probably why some of your followers last time said, "Hey, who is this guy saying, even though they're wrong, racist stuff or whatever?" It's just that I'm pro-nativist, and I'm for now, due to the fact that we had so many illegal immigrants, millions upon millions over the last decade. I just think we should have a moratorium and not have immigrants for a while. Find that racist if you want, but man, I lost track. What were we? I had something. We were just
the echo chamber with Trump, Elon.
Okay, exactly. So the most problematic thing about the relationship between Elon, Donald Trump, and X is that now that Elon Musk is officially like the closest person to the president, seemingly, he's the largest bureaucrat in the government. He's a one of the biggest military and otherwise government contractors that exists. But now he also owns the primary media apparatus, particularly that's used for politics. And people are paid to use X now. And the only people that really get a significant enough income to live are these huge conservative influencers that have 5, 6 million followers, whatever it is, and they have several subscribers. Like, I like Laura Loomer quite a bit, and she's not someone that's a partisan hack, but like she's got 1.5 million followers and she gets tons of impressions. She's got something like 5 to 7 or she's got, I think it's like 5,000 subscribers on X. But if you're paying $7 a month, you got 5,000 subscribers, you're making some jack. So like the point is though, is when you've got a guy that's extremely close to the president, he owns a media company, essentially an X, and he is incentivizing people financially by getting impressions, by getting followers, by getting subscribers. Well, then naturally, people do not want to post things that are either not going to be well received by their audience or are not going to perform well algorithmically. And classically, one of the very worst things that you can post on X, especially if you are a right wing political influencer, is dissent or criticism. Like if you were to say, this is a mistake of Donald, not that I'm saying this, but if you said Donald Trump made this XYZ decision, I don't agree with this. This administration's going in the wrong direction. Pam Bondi needs to be fired. How are they leaking signal messages and making excuses for it? If you say that, you're going to lose followers. People are going to openly dislike you, and you're very discouraged from doing it. So this whole monetization on X mixed with him being involved with a presidential, candidate at first and now the actual president, well, that's a conflict of interest. I mean, you are literally paying people to espouse a certain political ideology at that point. And a good example is if you look at the paychecks, which I've seen some of them from X, for a guy like, I don't want to name him by names because I don't want to put them on blast, but name any huge influencer that you see all the time. Let's just say like a Benny Johnson or something, who I like Benny. But I'm telling you, he's getting paid like almost like $8,000 to $10,000 every few weeks by X when you're that big. So if that's happening, how much can you truly, really trust the opinion of someone when it's that heavily financed, when it's that incentivized? So I don't know. I think that's a problem. And I think it's a huge problem for journalistic integrity. And I wish that more people addressed it. But of course, they're the ones getting paid. So you're not gonna hear about it.
Well, look at you lost your blue check. You felt the wrath.
Well, and that's like one of the examples I'm talking about. There are many, many cases where it's not a total conspiratorial thing. I'm not saying this with no evidence whatsoever, but if you espouse certain viewpoints, especially that are critical of either A, Elon Musk, or B, the Trump administration or any of the policies they're pushing, you will get less visibility. Sometimes that can be organically because people block the hell out of you or they mute you. Like my friend Owen Schroyer, who lost the check mark, like to anyone that doesn't know, me and like 100 other influencers or so lost our verification check mark due to this whole H-1B debacle where Elon Musk went on record and told people to go F themselves. And I'm an H-1B immigrant and this whole other thing. It was a big blow up. It damaged Vivek Ramaswamy's political reputation for a while. It was a big thing. But anyways, people were categorically and observably punished for that, especially someone like Laura Loomer, whose impressions went down by 95%. And even since that day, Owen Schroyer, his account was getting like 10,000 likes a post. Now it barely breaks 100, 200, and he's got twice as many followers since then. So
well, he's still stepping on the back of Owen. He's still stepping on the back of Owen's neck for that.
I mean, I don't even think that it's necessarily something where like Elon knows about it, but it really only takes one person behind the scenes at X to kind of turn you down like a bad song on the radio. So yeah, I do. I think that the whole algorithm and stuff, it shouldn't be nearly so complicated. You know, just show your followers what you post, and that's kind of really it.
You know, I found when that whole relationship started, when he was elected, and it was Thanksgiving weekend, and I see Elon at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm like, God, that's really weird. Like, he's always there. Friday nights when they leave DC, you know, they're walking to the helicopter to get out, to go to Air Force One. Sunday when they leave Mar-a-Lago to go back. But I was talking to a friend of mine, and he pointed something out to me that it just clicked. It makes sense that the two of them are together as much because I would argue right now, Elon, I mean, he's one of the top 5 most powerful people in the world, right? I mean, you got Trump, you got Putin, you got Xi. Unless there's another leader who could be a little bit ahead. But those two together, what you just said about Elon, and then you've got Trump, who's got the ability to, you know, drop a nuclear bomb on you. That's so much power right there.
I mean, I think that he's got, I'm not going to say he has more power than Trump, but think about the type of power that is involved in having literally infinite money. I mean, what is happening right now is not only because look, if Elon wants to push a certain message on X, whatever he posts about or talks about, people are obsessed with them. So if he wants to talk about South Africa and whatever's going on with the white farmers there or whatever, then guess what people post about? They post about South Africa. Or if he wants to post about, hey, this corrupt judge is causing an issue, then people post about judges all day. So, like you just said, I mean, one of the things he's been talking about is, oh, if you like he said this on numerous occasions, if someone impedes or imposes on XYZ policy, then I'm going to financially back their political opponent in the primary. And again, I like a display of power to get things that I want when it benefits me and it aligns with my beliefs. But I'm smart enough to understand that this precedent is terrible. What happens when Trump isn't president? God forbid what happens if something happens to, or excuse me, God forbid that something ever happens to Elon Musk. Well, now we've got this precedent where it's apparently acceptable for the richest guy in the world that's unelected to have the closest position to the president, be influencing policies, be constantly in his ear about things. I mean, what if this was Hakeem Jeffries and Alex Soros or something? You know what I'm saying? So I just think that people are so short-sighted, and I don't think they quite understand that some of the things that we're talking about right now, particularly, and I'm disgusted with the fact that the courts are blocking things like, transgender individuals playing in women's sports, or things like there's a few different things. But the point is that now Mike Johnson just yesterday made a statement saying that the federal government has the authority to eliminate federal courts in order to pass through some of these things. Like, we're talking about infringements on the Constitution, or at least on just moral righteousness, that are so egregious that if Democrats were doing the same things, I mean, we would be beside ourselves. So I just don't know where people, they just want to do this team sports rooting loyalty thing instead of just being principled. And I can't handle it because it's becoming, especially because the financial incentivization on X and this group think in general, it's just becoming super problematic. And that's why, like we talked about privately, you're even seeing like Alex Jones and Owen Schroyer and people that are aligned starting to argue.
Yeah, and I don't know, you know, in regards to Alex Jones, you know, which I told you offline, I mean, maybe you get a little bit older, the legal bills mount up, things have to change, family.
Well, he's most
pure
certainly
speculating there. I don't know. Lawsuits.
Well, if you're talking about sort of his change in rhetoric, or the fact that he's like so let's just call it a fanboy. And again, guys, like and I want to reiterate this, and I'm sure you like him too. I support President Trump. I want President Trump to do well. I'm the first person that, like, when some of these things that I particularly voted for, and he did just pass an election, or excuse me, an executive order yesterday that requires U.S. citizenship on voting registration forms, which is great. If he starts doing things like mass deportations or just a few other things that I care quite a bit about, I'll be the first person to be waving an American flag, wearing my Trump stuff, super happy. But when you got a guy like Alex Jones, or you got a guy that is just a very influential, very large influencer that is becoming sycophantic in his like obsessive way of being aligned with every single thing that Elon Musk says and every single thing that Trump says, when you were previously critical about these main points just less than 2 years ago, it's it's not just hypocritical, but it looks intentionally deceptive in order to profit. I mean, that's how it appears to me. Do you? I mean, I don't know. What's your opinion on that? Because he went from he's putting brain chips in your head. This is the ultimate key to the globalist. I don't hate Elon Musk as a person, but this is not, what we need is freedom warriors, to basically promoting. I guess he's raffling off Tesla trucks now.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Is he really?
He is selling a 19. He is selling right now, or raffling off, a custom Tesla that has Alex Jones' signature on the side of the vehicle and says 1776. He's got an Alex Jones version Tesla. And so, guys, like that's what I'm saying. When you've got the political establishment, or excuse me, you've got kind of the media establishment aligned with now this new large corporate entity that represents so many different aspects of government contracting and huge industries in Elon Musk, aligned with the federal government, all three of them, it's becoming almost like state media. Really, though. I mean, I had a conversation with a big time influencer this morning, and I was saying the things that the right wing media sphere claim to hate, they are now becoming.
Yeah, Teslas are cool now.
Opinion.
Teslas are cool now. Electric cars were not cool in the last administration.
People hated electric cars. They literally owe it, and we know, and let's be fair, the left loved them, and now they're defacing them and like literally putting their buttocks on the side of them and whatever else. So it's like, I mean, it's ridiculous on both sides, but that's the thing, and it's for everybody. Like, we got to stop with the team sports stuff, and we just got to be principled and focus on what's best for America. And honestly, I like Donald Trump, but if you really like Donald Trump and you're a principled person that wants to advance, things in the country, then it's your duty to say things like President Trump. And it's nothing but a Twitter post. It doesn't really make a difference, but like, people don't need to be mad at you because you say things like, we need to be holding these government officials accountable that are saying that they're going to be releasing files the next day, that are going on interviews constantly. They're saying we've got truckloads, and then we've got other guys that are leaking documents and making totally unforced errors. Just have some accountability, own it, quit playing so many games. And yeah, it's just, I just don't like the direction of it, man.
I almost said I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing winning. Tired of winning yet? I just saw that again a couple of days ago. Sebastian Gorka. Tired of winning? Tired of winning yet?
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. It's like they are so much more focused on the actual messaging than the substance, that, like I had posted the other day, due to these factors, these relationships, them all being tied together with the monetization, it is becoming a stream of continuous political propaganda. And again, I am on that side. I literally am on the right-wing side, and most of the propaganda that I see, I happen to agree with. But just because I agree with it and I like it doesn't mean that it's right. And I also see that this is just getting started. He's only been in there for a while. Like, how bad is it really going to get? And again, I'm already concerned about, realistically, I mean, I know it's a far ways from now, but I'm concerned about the midterms, because I think that this sort of like observably obvious propaganda is making the audience really mad. like go look at Alex Jones's comments. Like go seriously look at any of his posts and then go look at his loyal fans, and at least 60% of them are like, "You're a sellout. This is different. Oh, I remember when I used to love you." And so it's just weird. They need to stop it, and they need to start recognizing that authenticity instead of the team, the cheerleading is where it's at.
But I think it provides more opportunities, though, for people like yourself and people like myself. Not that I've been a saint my whole life, but in terms of what we're doing now, because there's a lane there where, because there's some other people too, I think are doing good work that you know. There's a road that's been carved out, a path that will continue to provide opportunities, I think, for people like us.
Oh, assuredly. It's actually the best. It's if you are someone that's willing to be like, because my whole thing is I'm just anti-establishment. I consider myself a nationalist and a populist. Like it's similar to what the ideology that Steve Bannon says. Um, and yes, it's creating a huge, huge opportunity because when people sort of smell inauthenticity in the waters, they're just looking for a real voice. It doesn't mean you don't need to be the smartest guy in the world. You don't need to be the greatest orator or performer on camera or any of that stuff. But if you have a combination of pretty good facts, you're honest, you're willing to put yourself out there, you got some decent relationships, can have some good interviews and things like that, yeah, it's a great time to grow. And also, like, a lot of the things I've said have been critical of these like big influencers and things like that. Plenty of them are great guys. Like you don't want to get to the point where you're so critical of them that they don't want to ever speak to you. Like I DM with Charlie Kirk pretty regularly, and I actually really like a guy like Charlie Kirk. But I also understand it's important to maintain some decorum, some respectability. Like you don't want to be mean, even if you disagree with people. There's plenty of people I disagree with vehemently, but as long as you keep it respectful, the main goal is like, at least for me, I would like to get some of my viewpoints out there to people that either haven't heard them before or people that do have large platforms. And the only way to do that is just to like remain cool with them. So, and that's honestly a huge issue with some people on the internet and on the right, because they just sort of like attack so hard. Like I have my issues with like a Ben Shapiro or whatever, but if I ever had the chance to talk to him, I'd be so thrilled to. And I think that people should sort of be mindful of that and recognize that like kindness and just overall decency is actually going to further your desired message much better than you being divisive or being intentionally an asshole.
Well, the other thing is too is you have to work with people sometimes you might not necessarily want to, and you see that with, I mean, both on the right and the left. But they're like, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like I've been talking about Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and people wanted to jump at him because he's gay. It's like, guys, really? I mean, I watched an interview with him on the All In podcast, and I'll tell you what, I was impressed with the guy. Like the guy is a smart, serious businessman. And
Well, yeah.
and he worked with George. Yeah, he worked with George Soros, and he talked about that in the '90s. Like he was part of the whole Bank of England crashing. If you haven't listened to it, it's a fantastic conversation. But when you're on that level, in my opinion, you're going to cross paths with people that, George Soros. I mean, and maybe he took from that. Maybe he learned a lot from that and said, "Oh, I want to help now." I don't know. I mean, but you're gonna not select somebody because he might be gay and worked with George Soros 35 years ago?
Well, what I can tell you is this. I mean, regardless of what everyone's personal opinions might be about things like that, there's certain battles that you may want to fight, and there's certain battles that just simply aren't worth it. For me, whoever Trump, what I don't
Scott
what's his name again?
Bessent. Scott Bessent.
Yeah. So I mean, like for me, he's not in a position that's a make or break position for me. So whatever even if I personally happen to not agree with, whatever he chooses to do in his personal life, it's just not worth that's not a hill that I'm worried about. You know, I got bigger fish to fry than worrying about that. And I think honestly, that's one of the issues with a lot of people on the right is they just put everything under such a microscope to where it's like you can't just like worry about the important battles and the small stuff. You know, the phrase "don't sweat the small stuff." To me, that's the definition of sweating the small stuff. Yeah, I don't like the fact that the guy um, dealt with George Soros. But technically, you know, Vivek Ramaswamy took money from George Soros's brother. So if you're going to hate Scott Bessent for his relationship with George Soros, well, you should, you know, like it, and that people don't apply it evenly. That's the thing. They look for confirmation bias. They look to apply whatever their criticism is whenever, you know, things like that come up. But yeah, I think overall it's just not a big deal. I mean, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'd pick him or whatever, but who cares? You know?
Well, it's the Kevin Bacon effect, right? Oh, so okay, because he had ties to this, so he's not qualified for the job. And you know, I mean, the economic standpoint. I mean, the team that Trump put together. I don't know if you watched the Howard Lutnick. He did an interview on the same podcast last week, and that was really good too. You know, talking about the sovereign wealth fund and tariffs and I mean, these are serious people, and I think that's one of the biggest things out there right now, in my view, the economic outlook that we have, and we are moving into a new system, whatever that looks like. And you know, Scott Bessent's the guy. If he's one of the guys that can, you know, land the plane or just crash it with the minimum amount of casualties, I'll take him all day long.
Oh, 100% agree. Like, look, who's ever gonna, I mean, it's almost like, it's like if you had a sports team, would you really be worried about like the name of the quarterback, or would you be worried about, or like whatever he does, you know, off the field? Are you really worried about that when it comes down to it? Or are you worried about putting points on the scoreboard? And for me, I'm just all about results. So if those guys are contributing to an economic situation that's going to be favorable for Americans, then let's go for it. And as far as Howard Lutnick is concerned, look, it's hard for me not to be a fan of the guy because all he seems to be
He
talking
makes you feel
about,
good. He makes you watch him and you get
all
pumped
he
up.
wants to seem to be talking about is like eliminating tax. Every time I hear the guy, he's talking about external revenue service, tariffs, and how he basically wants to eliminate all taxes. And I recently saw that it went from we're going to eliminate, you know, we're seeking to eliminate all federal income taxes to the last figure he gave was people under $150,000. Now, there's going to be a lot of people in the world that are looking to make $149,000 at that point. But, I mean, look, that'd be a huge boon for people. And I think, truthfully, I'm not sure exactly how they would do that, but I can just tell you that when you're giving messaging like that, it's going to be hard not to like you. I also like, for some reason, Liz, like, if you're a bald guy that's got your hair slicked back, yeah, it's just kind of gangster to me. So I think he kind of thinks he's like a little gank. I like that.
Well, he
So I'll
also
give him the credit.
he's got that regular looking guy to him, and you listen to him, and you're just like, man, this is a dude that would get me amped up if I was in a sales meeting, like on a Monday morning, getting ready to start the week. Like he just you just see the positive energy in him, and he believes what he's doing. Now, I don't know if this is going to work, what they're attempting to do. Because I believe we are at the end of the line here on the financial system. Now, how long that end of the line is, remains to be seen. It could be years, but they are attempting to, be adults in the room here dealing with this. Quoting my friend Matt Smith, and they have a plan. Again, is it going to work? I have no idea, but at least we have a team of people that have a plan. And Lutnick, he gets you pumped up. I mean, I've went back and listened to that interview, parts of it, a couple of times. And I'm like, God, this guy's selling me. If I saw him at the car lot, I'd buy it right away.
Yeah, there's a couple interviews with people that are involved in the administration I really want to see. I need to watch a few with him. I also would like to see the Steve Witkoff interview with Tucker Carlson that he just did recently. Have you heard about that?
I heard it was great. I didn't see it. It's hard to, how do you keep up with all this stuff?
Well, it's pretty hard. And that's the thing, man, is, the news cycle is moving faster than it ever has. I mean, let's be honest. the JFK files came out, what, less than a week ago? And you're really not, you're quite literally not hearing anything about it, which now this is a totally different direction and we don't have to go into it if you don't want to, but I think there's plenty of different reasons for that. I think some of them are honestly quite nefarious because some inconvenient truths were exposed. However, just what I'm talking about in this case, though, is just how fast the news cycle goes. That would be something we've been waiting for more information on that for a long time. And the fact that people are just like, yep, CIA and moving on, it's a little weird to me. It's a little weird, and but it's definitely it's a representation of just how breakneck speed it goes these days. And actually, I was talking about that with Owen because he really wants to keep the story of his swatting alive. Especially, he just got sent 3 more pizzas, yesterday, and he wants to keep that story alive. But it's quite difficult in this climate.
Explain that to me. And not to cut you off. Explain to me the pizza thing. I mean, before you do that, so the definition of swatting, somebody calls in and they say, "Oh, Owen's got a gun at his house. He lives at 1234 Smith Avenue," and so the SWAT team shows up, anticipating. Well, probably not at this point because he's got several calls, but initially they show up all geared up because they anticipate whoever has a gun in the house, and worst case scenario.
Well, yeah, but unfortunately, usually the circumstances or the details of the calls are like extreme. They're not just like he's got a gun. There are things that, and I'll watch my language here, but there are things that are, often, I don't even know how to say, unaliving people and all that type of thing. Like grisly scenes describing details that are like horrific enough so to where it's not just, an officer or two that shows up, but like a full team. And I don't know if you saw for Owens, and like luckily enough, he had security footage of it. But like, I mean, they made Owen come out, take his shirt off, and then it was like literally laser sights on his back by like a 6 or 7 full man team. So the intention is like whoever's doing this, which the suspicion is that it's either Ukrainian activists or just like some similar type of like Antifa type leftists, but their intention this is attempted murder. I mean, they're trying to get these people killed, and I think it should be treated like that. And the FBI has had some strong words. That at some point they said they're investigating it, but I don't know. It seems pretty serious, and it's not really stopping. So, but back to the original point, it is very difficult to keep things in the news cycle, and that's one of the things he's trying to keep in the cycle right now.
What's the pizza thing then? Where's pizza playing a part in all this?
So the pizza stuff is basically just like a stupid intimidation factor, like just to sort of give you the sense that
something's coming.
They know where your house is and they're bothering you. I mean, and they can send all kinds of other stuff too. I mean, it's happened to plenty of people, but usually they'll do the pizzas and then they'll swatch you, and then it's like more pizzas until people finally just get the company to block them.
So they're just fucking with you. Just like you're like, the pizza comes, I know something's coming.
Yeah, I mean, in and of itself, it's not such a big deal, but it's just kind of a psychological intimidation factor because it's to show people that they know where you live, basically.
Because he got hit. Juanita Broderick, I saw. Well, he's got hit several times. Juanita Broderick, I saw, got hit. Catcherd's got hit.
All right, I haven't shared this yet because I didn't want to bring attention to it, and I'm not going to post or anything about it online. So, hey, whoever sees this, it is what it is. But I even got pizza sent to me last Thursday and last Friday. Luckily, I did not get swatted, but I had to set up a whole different camera thing, and I actually had to call the non-emergency police. I called the non-emergency number for the police and just said, hey, a ton of people are getting swatted. And I know I'm small, but they've gotten, like, I don't even know how many followers, not that many, it's 50,000 or whatever it is. But there's other people that got swatted that had that many too. So now they're coming after people, and I'm not even particularly partisan. So I'm thinking to myself, like, whoever's doing this, it's very vindictive and it's very, it's dangerous, man. So, hopefully they start treating it a little bit more seriously because, I mean, someone's going to end up getting hurt from this.
What do you think the goal is then of of them doing this to people like yourself, Juanita Broderick, Owen?
I mean, honest to God, I sincerely think that it's coming from such a like extremist type of group that I think they're trying to get someone killed straight up. Now, not maybe not somebody like me because I'm not famous like that. You know what I mean? I'm not famous like that. I'm not really putting anything out there that's like really like Trump, 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 Trump. Most of the people that they've gone after have been people that are like very much so in the big time Trump influencer sphere. Like, not that I'm not a supporter of Trump, but they're very outward with their, you know what I mean? It's like constant MAGA cheerleader thing. But yeah, like when you do it to someone like Juanita Broderick, which I believe she's like a woman in her 70s, I mean, how sick is that, man? You know? And it's like that's one of the things too is I've talked a whole lot about the right and because I'm sort of part of a faction of the right where they particularly kind of try to badmouth me because I'm an isolationist and I'm someone that's an immigration restrictionist. So they try to paint me as like a bad guy or the woke right, which is absurd. But for it to be happening to people like that, it's insane, man. It really is. So I'm worried about it. Owen is really worried about it.
He's worried about getting hit again, or just.
Well, yeah, because no one has any idea who it is, and now, especially with the advancement of AI, and I used to be in the logistics industry where I would coordinate air cargo shipments and tons of full truckload shipments for major companies that everybody knows about. But we had instances where people would steal like $150,000 worth of cargo in a trailer. And then like to track it down because the police couldn't even do it, we had to do things like there's ways where you can call somebody from like their wife's phone number so they pick up like there is so many different things that people can do nowadays that are just super deceptive and just crazy to where I don't know how they'd ever trace these calls because they're voice over IP calls. They're likely using AI. They're likely using false phone numbers, voice changers. So I think there does need to be a formal investigation into it because, like, for me, I don't even want to say it, but I live in St. Louis, Missouri, where I literally live in the murder capital of the entire United States. More people get murdered where I live than any other state or any other city, in the entire United States. So if someone makes a phone call and they say Dominic is doing something that would require a SWAT team to come to my home, I mean, the chances of me actually getting shot are higher because I live in such a dangerous community. I live in a nice part of town. It's not exactly that cut and dry, but you understand what I'm saying. So I hope the people that like think that it's just harassment or that it's just a bother or whatever, like it's serious and you could get someone killed. And I do really hope that the DOJ starts doing some stuff, Michael, because not to rant, and this is a different thing, but these people have the audacity to create a task force to deport people that are actually legally living here, even though I don't agree with anything they have to say whatsoever, but they're creating task force for that. They're creating task force about October 7th, an event that happened in another country, yet they're not doing anything about prominent American voices literally having attempted murders on them repeatedly and consistently. And so I want to see some action from this DOJ that's centered on Americans, not these sort of trivial pursuits.
Well, also,
did you know about the task force for October 7th?
Yeah, I'd heard about it. Which
and again, it's of course we're not like I pray for those victims. I hope the hostages are returned. That I don't know if they're still around. It's not to sound insensitive about it, but we live in the United States. Why are we setting up a task force for a foreign country and an issue that happened there when they have their own government, plenty of money, and the best intelligence agency in the entire world? It just doesn't make sense.
Because it's democracy in the Middle East, Dominic. We have to. That's what the boomers say. We have to.
Oh, I know. At least they're not doing At least they're not doing that quite as much as they used to, because that was the thing for quite some time, really from the '60s until about the end of the Bush administration. Well, Iraq and Afghanistan.
I mean, my only thing with that, with regards to October 7th, and I said this yesterday with Ivor Cummins, we were talking about that, and I said, look, don't tell me that the IDF did not know that was going to happen on October 7th, because Gaza is a little stretch of land, 15, I think it's 15 by 20 miles. There's cameras everywhere there.
Do you know what the Hannibal Directive is?
Yeah, because some of their own civilians got killed.
Well, yeah, because they
took them, 8 hours? Would it take them 8 hours to respond to that?
Yeah. So, all right. The Hannibal Directive stuff's a little bit more controversial, but we'll talk about it at least for a minute. Here's a really good example. The point of the Hannibal Directive is they don't want Israelis to get captured by the enemy, because they have a policy in Israel where it's, if seriously to rescue one person, they will give, I think one of the biggest exchanges they've ever done is 5,000 prisoners for just one Israeli, which, to be honest with you, the way that they operate, if I was Israeli and I lived in Israel, I would love how they operate. They're the ultra nationalist. They're the most ultra nationalist country they care about their people deeply. But yeah, they don't want people to be captured because it costs them dearly in negotiation, and all these different reasons. So they have something called the Hannibal Directive, where essentially, and what's his name? Yoav Gallant, I believe, who was the former IDF Secretary of Defense. He even admitted that they'd used the Hannibal Directive, and yeah, it was to kill their own soldiers before they're captured. And if you notice, outside of whatever the music festival was called, you saw the scene of all those completely destroyed cars. Remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
These completely burnt out cars. And they're saying that Hamas did that, but Hamas only has simple arms like AK-47s, they had grenades and AK-47s. It's not possible to create that type of damage without serious artillery. So the story goes is that they were using military helicopters, and they kind of took out that whole area. But yeah, I that's all kind of alleged, and some people have admitted to it. But the point is that yes, that's one of the most sophisticated borders that exists in the entire world. It is the most sophisticated intelligence apparatus in the entire world. They have sensors, they have cameras, they have everything. They honestly, more than likely, in my opinion, they allowed it to happen in order for them to drastically intensify their militaristic efforts in the area, ultimately occupy and completely remove all Palestinians from the area. They've since done a regime change in Syria. They've moved only 20 miles south of Damascus. They've occupied almost all of southern Syria. They've taken more land in Lebanon. They've eliminated Hezbollah. They've eliminated Hamas, essentially. And now, which is this greater Israel plan that people oftentimes say that they're pursuing to basically be the dominant nation in the entire region, now you're seeing all this focus on Iran. You're constantly hearing the war drums beating for Iran. And that's because that's the last big power that really stands in their way. You already see Saudi Arabia wanting to normalize relations with them. They almost did prior to October 7th. You see people like Dubai, obviously Egypt and Jordan a long time ago. I mean, this is a project to remove, the whole Islamic resistance to Israel from the region. And I understand there's plenty of arguments for that, but people need to realize what it is. And we are 100% pushing that. It's clear as day.
Well, you're also seeing right now, you're seeing all the unrest in Turkey, which I have not seen an update on that in a day or two. But I don't know that Erdogan, he might not survive the instability in Turkey. And, Turkey was, they were extremely important in the whole Syria, which that's still going on. And you're reading about the whole genocide right now of the Alawites in Syria. Yeah. Giuliani, I mean, who put him into power?
Well, I think it was an effort between the United States, Israel, and Turkey.
And now they've changed his name. They've rebranded the guy. He's like corporate now. He goes from wearing a robe to a suit.
Well,
Not
you know
making
what
light of it, but
you know what the craziest thing about it is too is like, you know, so many people were posting about why are people not complaining more about the slaughter of Christians and the Alawites in Syria? And it's like, we, people like myself, were talking about the fact that they wanted to force regime change in Syria for more than 10, 15 years, 20 years at this point.
you couldn't get
I
rid
mean,
of Assad. He was like a cat. That guy, you couldn't get rid of him.
but the point is like, you know, Damascus was a pretty westernized country. You're allowed to be Christian there. There was alcohol is allowed there. They don't live under Sharia law. They did not live under Sharia law in Syria. Yes, they had many views that were, you know, anti-American, and I'm not saying they were the best, but considering other areas in the region, you know, Assad did keep order in the country. Now that he's gone, what are you seeing? You're seeing people dragged through the streets. You're seeing brutality that we rarely ever see in the world. And it's like before when you were saying, and make no mistake, Israel wanted, and in the United States, but both of our countries wanted the Assad regime to topple. And now that it's toppled, you're seeing people basically complain about it. But before, when we were warning about it and we were telling you the reasons why it wanted to happen, people would say that you were a conspiracy theorist, and they'd also call you anti-Semitic. And so that's what I mean. This whole gatekeeping effort around inhibiting honest discussions about some of these geopolitical conversations, it's just not necessary. And truthfully, if people are interested in sort of the temperature online going down, or they're interested, and it is true, there is, you know, growing, there is essentially, not essentially, there is for sure growing anti-Semitism online. If people are worried about that, then we need to stop gatekeeping some of these conversations that are intentionally avoided all the time. Like it will stop if people can just have honest conversations. But as long as people feel they're not allowed, or that there's a certain like viewpoint that is financially incentivized to maintain, it's only going to get worse. And so I just wish that we could talk about it a little more openly, because I'm telling you, Michael, if you were talking about the fact that they wanted to force regime change in Syria and they wanted to expand their profile, they wanted to take land both in Gaza, Syria, and Lebanon, people would call you an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist. But the truth is when I told people after October 7th that the main plan was for them to take that land, it's happened since then. So it's like, well, am I an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist, or am I someone that's just giving you my honest geopolitical opinion? So I wish that people would stop automatically assuming that if you give some sort of reasonable criticism, you're like a terrorist supporter. It's insane to me. Because of course I don't support those people. You know what I mean?
What did you think about the whole Signal debacle that's been going on the last couple of days? Or controversy, not debacle.
You know, I think that it shows that the tribalism and that the tendency for people to be just ultimately so biased is alive and well as ever. Because, look, I get mistakes happen, but let's just say that Biden was president, and let's say that Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan and all those guys were on this thread, and Alejandro Mayorkas, and let's say they made this mistake, and let's say they added Tucker Carlson or some conservative journalist to this. The right wing would literally never let it rest. We'd be talking about investigations. We'd be talking about putting him in prison. We would be saying every hyperbolic, embellished comment that we could ever say about it. But instead, all I'm seeing today is the majority of people say it's either fake or they're trying to discredit The Atlantic, which is a bad publication. But it's clear, like you saw in Owen's video, just own the mistake, guys. The fact that they're running cover on it, it makes them look totally disingenuous to me. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, and first of all, you know, how long has this been going on with communication via Signal? Second of all, you know, you see there were emojis, right? Wasn't there bomb emojis, I think?
Yeah, and they're not even, you're not legally supposed to have Signal downloaded on a government device to begin with. So, those communications, for anyone that's not privy to this, they make them go into freaking rectangle rooms with lead walls to discuss a lot of this stuff oftentimes. But however, that's so inconvenient to do that. And many times these communications, specifically for stuff about wars or anything that's at least sensitive, not necessarily classified, but sensitive, like you have a special phone or laptop, and that's the only thing you're supposed to use for it. And people want to be able to govern when they're out of town and stuff too, so they opt to use these apps. And I'm not saying they're wrong for using it, but they're not supposed to, and it's for a reason. But yeah, I'm just so mad at the fact that, gosh, for years these people were such alarmists, and I hate Democrats. Make no mistake, I will never be a Democrat. I want nothing to do with them. They're obviously nuts. But if this was happening and Democrats were in control, I mean, can you imagine what we'd be saying? Every single post would be about it today. Every single one. And so, like, that's the whole double standard. It's very difficult for me to try to maintain friendly relationships or not keep posting about this, because it's just so bad, man.
Where do you think the Democratic Party goes from here?
Well, I think man, this is the problem with the divisiveness on the right. The Democrats have literally nothing. They have no strong candidates. They have terrible ideas. They just pushed things that are unnatural, against God, in my opinion. They pushed a lot of just woke, terrible trash that no one's interested in the public, but especially corporations aren't interested in, which is why they're no longer pushing it, because it was unprofitable. Woke movies aren't profitable. Woke ideology in corporations, like the Target campaigns and the Pride Month changing the logos and stuff, that stuff is not viewed very, very favorably anymore. So they don't really have anywhere to go. The only thing they can hope for is that the right eats itself to the point where many people are checked out and don't vote. And classically in elections where they're not presidential elections, Republicans don't show up. So I'm worried about the midterms already because of the divisiveness that's already, it's only March, It's literally, he's been the president for what? 2 months and a few days? So that's the reason why I really hope that people can chill out a little bit with the divisiveness, because that's their only chance, is that if the right eats itself so bad, that's their only chance. But I don't think they have anything. I mean, what are they doing? They're doing Gavin Newsom. They have nothing.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders and AOC were just out here in Arizona last week. I think, in my opinion, the only one listening to me is you right now, so what do I know? But they are sitting back, waiting for the midterms and hoping or anticipating some type of economic recession, because that gives them a window to get back in. Because the masses don't pay attention to like the way you and I do, and they have nothing right now. They still haven't got it. They still haven't woken up to why they lost. They're still, if they could push the narrative, the DEI, the LGBTQ, they still would. But I think that they are right now not in retreat. I mean, they're never going to go away, and they will figure out and course correct, but their next best opportunity is the midterm. Because if we're in a recession, and let's say it starts next summer, he's going to lose the House and the Senate, I believe, in the midterm.
So I don't think you're wrong. Economic hardship always is really the main catalyst for, people to get upset and actually show up to the polls. But like when we think about just their overall long-term prospects, I mean, let's think of the most popular Democrats there is. It's literally AOC and Jasmine Crockett and Gavin Newsom. And truthfully, I mean, like, maybe And he would have to try so hard. And honestly, he's a decent politician. He's fake as hell. He can give an interview and sound kind of decent at times. But if it's someone like AOC or Jasmine Crockett, they got no chance. Like there's way too many moderate Americans that'll just never go for it ever. And they're floating. I mean, right now we've got AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Kamala Harris, and I guess Newsom. So like long term, I mean, that's the face of their party. So they're gonna need to hope and pray like a celeb. They almost need their own version of a Donald Trump. They need like a celebrity or someone that's completely outside the box that people like to come and participate. Otherwise, especially with the Republicans' efforts to kind of be a bigger tent, incorporate a lot more Latinos and things. I mean, that was the largest demographic shift. I don't really know, man. That's what's scary to me, though. And not to rant on this one, but I'm going to give you a totally different. I'm gonna kind of turn the page on it, but it's the same chapter. What's so problematic and what's so scary to me is how you've seen. I don't know if you've noticed it, but the Trump hate basically has gone away. All these huge companies at the inauguration itself, Jeff Bezos there, Elon there, president of Google is there, Mark Zuckerberg's there, Sam Altman's there, Larry Ellison's there. I mean, I'm talking about guys that are freaking, I mean, these aren't conservatives. These are some of the most powerful, essentially oligarchs in the whole world. And the fact that you're seeing them all align with Trump and you're not seeing the usual pushback, that means to me that the powers that ultimately are bad, they surrendered and they're now with Trump. They're not with the Democrats anymore. And that's kind of why like things like mass deportations or some of the things that were a little more hardcore, that were a little more nationalist, that was a little more populist, you're not really seeing any talk about them anymore. That was all just chat to get in. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, I thought after the election, because I didn't think Trump would win, and because of all the mechanisms they had in place from 2020 to be able to take it. And you look back on that now, obviously I was wrong, but you look back on that and, even post-election, how quiet it was, right? There was no January 6th style. There was nothing. And so that's makes me wonder, into 28, because all these tech people are behind JD Vance. I mean, he's one of their guys. Now, I don't want to start talking about 28 because it's so far away and things can change. I mean, look at where we are now in comparison to 4 years ago or 3 years ago. So, who knows what may or may not occur, but all signs point to me. I mean, they put Trump in. It was in their best interest to do that, so they keep moving forward with, CBDC, which I think is inevitable. We're gonna get it. We pretty much, the foundation's already there. You use your phone for everything.
What's happening?
You can't.
They're gonna do that. They're gonna two things that are coming. It might be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but for sure, they're gonna eliminate cash. Cash is how people do all the illegal stuff. They're going to eliminate cash. They can't track cash. And you're probably going to get some sort of, God, I don't want to say it. You're probably going to get some freedom. You're probably going to get some sort of amendment to the Constitution or something that restricts the First Amendment, at least regarding, people are going to say conspiracy, but I don't care. You're going to get something with Israel. I promise you. If people remain talking how they are on X, you're gonna get, and we got a task force right now, specifically ran by Leo Terrell, that is to combat anti-Semitism. They're already deporting people that are legal residents that are allowed to live here for what is supposed to be a First Amendment protected right of protest, not for any actual criminal offenses. So, like, that is the goal. It's already illegal in 19 countries in Europe, and I promise you, there's already 37 laws that have passed within the states domestically. You can't boycott Israel. You have to sign a contract if you're going to do a government deal that says that you're not going to criticize them. I mean, it's like, I'm just telling you, that's where I think it's going. So I don't know. I'm worried about those two laws happening sometime. CBDCs, and I don't care if it's about anti-Semitism or what it is, but just I want First Amendment, guaranteed.
But isn't the challenge with that though? I mean, if you're here on a visa, you don't have a First Amendment.
So, contrary to people's popular belief, they do. In they do. Now, they have absolutely no right to break the law, but it's like they're not saying that because if the guy broke the law, he'd be charged with a crime and would already be in court. They're just saying, and I'm not talking about the Mahmoud. Like, look, I'm not defending this guy ultimately. And if anyone ever heard our last podcast, I'm not, if you're going to give me an excuse to deport somebody, I'm going to take it. I don't like this guy's views. I detest them. But this is my point, Michael. We've got millions. The highest count that people have said, Laura Loomer has said it could potentially be 60 million undocumented immigrants in the United States that are for sure here illegally. But instead, we're going and we're specifically creating task force and targeting people that are here legally that might have terrible views, where in order for us to deport them, it's a complicated court case. It could even be advanced up to the Supreme Court. And we already know how these liberal judges usually, act. So for me, it's like, okay, we can worry about that too, but can we maybe just make a task force to worry about deporting the people that for sure should not be here first? That's all. I just think that some of the focus just seems a little bit misguided for the priorities. Like we want to talk about Doge and eliminating waste in the government. Just in the state of California in 2023, I think it was 40. It was the number I'm about to say could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was like $40 billion is how much it ended up costing just one state. So, I mean, you have to look that up. But the amount of money that's wasted on this is crazy. So the best thing Doge could do is get these dang deportations going, man. Sorry, I'm flying out the handle on this one, but I just think that the aims of the administration right now, I think they just need to kind of shuffle the deck and reprioritize.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. The CBDC is happening. I mean, it's inevitable, and you can't stop it.
Yeah, it's happening for sure.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Shoot a tower? I mean, the whole you'll have people that'll be like, oh, they'll be civil. And what are you gonna target? It's a digital platform. You can't stop it.
And let's be honest, Michael. Like, the American people are awesome. I'm American. You're American. Look at the flag behind you. Like, this isn't meant to disparage people, but we have become so apathetic. I mean, for us to really cause a big stink about a law they made, it would have to be so. It would need to be something like it would need to be a huge military draft or something. That would probably make people either protest or be very vocal or whatever it might be. But if they do CBCDs, if they do that, maybe the government will say something like, hey, yeah, we're going to do these CBDCs, but we'll give you 25% extra on or something along those lines. They already print off money anyways with no backing. So, yeah, I think it's coming. And some of the things along with CBDCs too, and this is a conversation for another day, and maybe we can talk about it sometimes, but we get so preoccupied with talking about modern day politics, left versus right, all these other things, but soon we've got the next industrial revolution, which is super advanced AI combined with robotics. And pretty soon here, it's we're going to be talking about how we've got robot armies and people taking jobs everywhere and everything's automated. I don't know if people are quite prepared for the future of the next 10 years. It's about to get crazy.
I don't think people can handle it, to be honest with you. And that's where even some people, in my opinion, they think that, Lutnick's going to come in, they're going to do away with income tax and tariffs, and it's just going to bail us out of everything, and we just go back to the way life, what life was like before. And that's not going to happen. But I don't think people have the stomach for it. I don't think they can handle what really, in my view, needs to be done. People just can't handle it.
Well, what do you mean? Do you mean as far as Just like what do you mean? Like in changing the government, or can't stomach what exactly?
Well, just what, things need to be stripped down. Things need to be crashed. They need to be rebuilt. It's needed to happen for a very, very long time. You can't salvage these institutions any longer.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, no, that's what I
Am I
thought
going
that
off
you
track
meant.
here?
No, that's exactly what I thought. That's what I thought you meant. I just wanted to clarify. I know I 100% agree. It's a kind of a sensitive topic because people tend to associate that with like almost like revolutionary talk, and like that's not what it's about. We're talking about the fact that if some system is broken at its core to the point where it's quite literally incapable of functioning as it was originally intended, and it's just, if you have a broken car, if you got a couple minor issues with the engine, that's okay. But if you got a totally broken engine, thing's never going to drive again. You need a whole new engine. And that's the thing, is our government and many other institutions in the country, they've been so foundationally compromised, mostly because of money and corruption, which obviously go hand in hand, that how can we really have an effective government when almost every single decision or opinion is heavily influenced by millions of dollars by very powerful institutions and lobbies? And then also, just on its face, we live in a democracy where if you were to promote a law or legislation that was to benefit America exponentially, but you were only going to see the bear fruit in like 10 years, 20 years, which like long-term good policies are fantastic. But if it means that we're going to have 5 years of pain for 40 years of prosperity, people literally will vote for whatever the opposite of it is, simply because people always want what's best for them at the exact time. So when every decision a politician makes is designed around them being reelected, we can never really expect the decisions to truly benefit America in the long term. And that's a foundational issue with the actual country and with the way our government's designed. And the only way to eliminate that would be to actually get rid of lobbying and these outside influences, formally, which they will never vote to do, because the same people that need to get rid of it are the same people that are the primary benefactors of the system.
Well, and then also to add to that is the amount of grift and fraud that's in all of these institutions. I mean, think about college. What a grift that is. $30,000 a year to go to an undergrad school, not Harvard or Yale, but to go get a marketing degree, it costs you $30,000 a year. And for
Oh,
what?
I mean, it's unbelievable.
They just bury you in the system. They make you a slave at a young age, so then you're stuck. I mean, should medical school be putting people hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt? I
mean,
don't think so.
no, of course not. And it's not just, it's not just schools and it's not just government agencies, but that's the thing, is we become a society that's just, America forever was based heavily on moral values, truthfully. And that's why we're still even living off a very moral society that we had for, years and years and years and years, and a high trust society as well. But now it's so built on just pure exploitation and greed that, yeah, you see it everywhere. You go and you see extra fees, and I mean, you can't even buy a cup of coffee without the stupid iPad being spinned around on you these days. So it's like, and it's no disrespect to them, I want people to make their money, but at the same time, it's like we have just become a society that is so ran by greed, attention, exploitation that, nowadays,
Grifting. Everybody's a grifter.
yeah, and instead of, someone falling into a train track back in the day, people would immediately go run, help them. Now, what does everybody do? They do this. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that people don't want to address some of the more serious and underlying issues with our culture and society because they're difficult to actually, ascertain and to speak about. But it's true. Like, we got to start making some pretty serious changes because the patterns that we're witnessing today, I mean, Michael, what do you think this world's going to be like in 10, 20 years? I mean, it's not sustainable. We can't live in this type of society that's ran like this. Eventually, it'll become like the like literally the Middle Ages. It's going to be the super 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 rich. The middle class has already been evaporating over the last few years, but that's where we're headed. So I just hope that people and you were right. They don't have the stomach for it. They don't even have the stomach to address the potential of it happening.
No, because they've had it too good for too long. I mean, and I hate the word hope, so I'm careful I don't use that word, or else I get a lot of shit for it. Because hope is not a strategy. Quoting my friend Michael LLC and Matt Bracken,
Yeah,
it's not a, you can close
I
your eyes, cross your fingers, and pray, but that's not gonna work. So, but maybe, and again, I touched on this earlier. I don't know that this is gonna work, but what they're trying to do on the economic side, that could, if it was successful, it could lift the middle class. It could lift the middle class tremendously. Um, that could help. I mean, obviously, it would do more than help, but there's a plan there.
Can they do it without Congress?
Depends who you talk to, right? I mean, I talked to somebody the other day that was saying that they can't make these huge cuts. They had passed a law during Nixon, and I'm blanking out what the name of it was, that they can't just go in and just gut out agencies, gut out forms of government. I don't know. I think this is a Hail Mary. I think the chances are greater that it's not going to work, but this is the best team I've seen assembled and best plan going forward. And if the plan works, it would lift the middle class.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I want to admit something too. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but you know, for the last like decade, I have really been. I always say this is the terminology I use to my friends, but I'm built for war, political war. Like, especially with 2016, the constant attacks, the stuff that happened during 2020. I mean, I'm just kind of an anti-establishment guy, and I'm always sort of like thinking that whenever it comes to relying on the government, it's simply just not going to work. But I also do love Trump. I also see what he's saying and the messages and the ideas that he wants to initiate and put into law. And I do see the team around him, which, especially from an economic perspective or standpoint, they do seem to be very talented, and I do seem to be very encouraged. I think Scott Bessent has said a lot of great things. I think Howard Lutnick has also said a lot of great things. I'm just concerned that the other parts of government that we need to rely upon, especially the House and Senate, but more particularly even just the courts. I mean, like if we can't keep biological guys from playing female sports because of the court, can we really expect that like a monumental tax a change or decision or financial, decision, can we really expect that to not meet the same impediments and obstacles? And so like that's why I want to be encouraged. I really do, but I'm just not sure exactly how we can actually institute these changes that really I hope are made. You know?
I'm with you. I'm with you. And this is where the skepticism, because anytime the government gets involved, it doesn't work. And coming back to Lutnick, yeah, he's gotten a lot of things done. But you're talking about private companies. This is government, right? You can't just go in there and wave your finger and make things happen like that. And so I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work. I think the likelihood it won't is probably greater. But in the meantime, I'm trying to have like a different attitude about it and say, let's see what they can do. Let's see, what these guys who I think are very, very, very serious people, if they can implement it. Because it's never been done before. I mean, this has never been done. So you could train to ride a tiger, right? You can go through every simulation, but until you get on that tiger and try to tame it, you don't know what you don't know. And, they're attempting something that has not been done. So
No, for sure. And you said something earlier. You said hope's not a strategy, and you're correct. And I think what you said, Michael Yon might say that. Michael Yon's terrific, by the way. Awesome war reporter. I have a big interest in war, which is one of the reasons, by the way, guys, why, some of the times that I talk, and you might think it's like too critical of Israel or whatever. It's really not so much anything I have against them. It's more just that they are involved in a lot of military conflicts that the U.S. backs, and I just don't agree with that. But um,
You just hate all the gays, right, Dominic? You just stir up things a little bit. You hate all the gays.
so stop.
I'm
No,
kidding.
but
I'm kidding.
I'm so sorry that I lost my train of thought again.
No,
But
sorry.
what the hell were we just speaking about just one moment ago?
No, we were talking about Besant and Lutnick and the financial implications and lifting up the middle
Oh
class.
yes. Now okay, so we were discussing how it's much more efficient to get things done in the private sector. And one thing I'm starting to notice that honestly I feel bad for him too is I think Elon Musk is getting, and now this is just speculation. Now I have heard some things, but I don't know if they're true. I think Elon Musk is getting pretty frustrated because he is very ambitious. He's very innovative. He's had lots of great ideas. And I mean, he's being met with more obstacles than really anyone. Like just the other day, he made some type of change with the Social Security Administration, and then literally just one day later, it's already blocked. And I think that for a guy that's had so much success, that is known to be incredibly efficient in his own businesses, I don't think he's dealt with any of this type of bullshit that dealing with the government. I mean, just like you guys don't like going to the DMV because it's so ridiculously inefficient and takes a long time and it sucks. Well, Elon Musk is dealing with like a DMV times infinity. And so I think that he's probably getting a little, disgusted with the fact that some of these changes he wants to implement either aren't happening as fast, or that they made USAID hire people again, and it's just terribly inefficient, man. So I hope that hope isn't a strategy, but it also doesn't hurt to have it. And I think that we do need to maintain some. It's still only been 2 months, and who knows? Maybe they can do some things to either challenge some of these court rulings and ultimately get some of these laws passed. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do have. I don't know if it's going to be like the 150,000 tax elimination thing or what, but I do think they will make some changes over time. And I just hope they're able to do it before the midterms while we still do hold the House and the Senate, regardless of how slim those margins might be. But it's time to do it now, though, for sure.
What are you working on? Anything you want to share with projects or future endeavors that you want to?
You know, for right now, I've had this whole thing going on with my buddy Owen Schroyer because InfoWars has had a ton of legal problems over the years. So for now, I'm still, tenuously, at least at this point, planning on working with him here in the future, doing a new network. So, but for right now, we don't have any set date on that. So for now, man, I'm just going to continue to be putting my views out there on X, D Michael Tripi on X, if you guys want to follow me. And no, we're just going to be telling truth, having a good time, and enjoying the summer coming up here, and just seeing what happens with the administration, man. That's about the only plan for me for right now.
Is it hard for you to step away from this stuff? Like, could you actually go somewhere this summer and take a week off?
Yeah, I could go some. I can go
Or do,
someplace and take a week off, but as far as looking at it, still, at least, a little bit. Yeah, it's difficult to step away once you get into it, man.
I bring my gear with me
Do you find that to be the same case for you, or?
I mean, I went back to see my mother at the end of October for a week, and because I've been doing this independently for a little over a year now, and I don't know, I feel like you get some traction if you take a week off. People will just move on, and so I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, I had that week I'd only put out 4 episodes because I was like, you're not at your home studio, so I had to like go to a relative's building to record. It was 20-minute drive and set up, and it was fine, but there was a little bit of guilt for me. It was like, okay, I didn't the amount of content out that I wanted to. So could I do a whole week off right now? No, because even through the holidays, man, I mean, I put stuff out. I didn't put as many out, but I did year in review. I had people come on, regulars like yourself, and we talked about movies. People like were movie buffs, and we would just talk about movies for an hour.
Yeah. Well, I do. I will say this. I got a lot of other interests. I mean, I don't just like politics. I like a lot of other stuff too. It's just that people don't, they follow me for politics though. So that's really one of the only reasons I always talk about it. But yeah, one thing I do have planned, and there's kind of been some hesitation on my side just because when you put videos out there and stuff, you're putting my name's already out there, but when you're doing videos and stuff too, it just opens you up to a whole different world of criticism and all. I like to do long form things, but like I am planning on doing a combination of a lot more video content, a lot more things that are just not text based posts. And then also, I mean, man, I don't really want to do it because there's so many, but I do have a little podcast or whatever you want to call it in the works. So I am thinking of doing kind of an interview based show. It'll be a monologue, probably for around 30 minutes or so. And then, 30, 45 minutes of other stuff. But I am planning on doing that. I mean, I've made a lot of big connections and a lot of good contacts over the years. And so if anything else, some of these bigger commentators and things that I am sometimes disappointed in as far as some of the things they fail to talk about, I'm cool enough with them to where they've agreed to do some interviews. So now it's kind of the onus is on me to go ahead, get it going, get some production stuff going. And so that's the plan for now. So we'll hope it comes to fruition, but that's what we've got lined up for now.
Here's what I would end with too, end with on this. And, from my own experience, and I'll ask you the same. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else right now. I was in corporate America. It was awful. And I talked to my friends that are still in it. Some of them have very high positions, and I don't envy them at all for what they have to go through. Sunday night blues. You go into work and you just look at the clock to see what time 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock is going to be there. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else right now.
Well, and truthfully, man, people say it and it sounds kind of cheesy sometimes, but they kind of say that, if you're doing something you love, you don't work a day in your life. But I'll say this, sure, it's still work, but if you're passionate about it, like I really do care about this stuff. I care about it a lot. And especially the fact that I don't think that there's a ton of people that are being entirely genuine about their messaging out there. It really does motivate me to want to speak more and to, learn more, to have more discussions with people that I both agree and disagree with. And I think that it's important for people to do that. And like you mentioned earlier, there is a lot of space right now for some new sort of more independent minded voices. And I think it's an opportunity and a time to start seizing territory, and I hope to do that. And it's an inspiration to see what you're doing, man. I can appreciate, especially the consistency that you put out content. You're a very dedicated guy, a very nice guy, knowledgeable, cool guy. So, when I see people like you doing it, it's like, well, why the hell can't I just do it too? So appreciate it, man.
Your monologues would be really good. I wouldn't even wait on that, man, if I was you. I mean. Yeah,
well, you know what? Maybe we'll get one rolling. You can be one of my first guests too.
Be an honor, man.
Hear the first monologue yourself.
Be an honor.
Awesome,
Dominic, I enjoy our conversations. I appreciate it, and look forward to the next one. I'm sure it won't be that long, and because God only knows there'll be plenty to talk about.
Well, hey, you got my number this time, man. So no, we'll be in touch soon. Honored to be a guest, and I really enjoyed the conversations too, and looking forward to the next one, brother.
Mic drop.